Normally, at the earliest, maybe Memorial Day. So we're talking a big concern here, and we're concerned that it might already have 3 strikes against us. So let's see if we can make sense. First of all, let's take a look at the river. Now, this is downtown. For those of you who don't frequently see the river, from the downtown area to Mayport, we haven't seen any algae yet. And really, for that matter, from downtown all the way down to about the Buckman, we're pretty much algae-free. So we're talking about areas from south of the Buckman and southward. But as a reminder, here's concern number 1. Let's go to the river and let's take a look. So concern number 1 is the fact that St. Johns River, remember, it flows from the south to the north. Do you remember the big algae, really explosion they had down over South and Central Florida, primarily most think because of, let's just call it agricultural sludge. Well, although that bloom then diminished, that was simply because the water temperatures cooled, but we knew that the ingredients were working to the north. So that's strike number 1. It looks like those ingredients have made it at least to portions of what we call the St. Johns. Then remember the fact that we had a relatively warm winter here, very few freezes. Well, there were even less freezes over Central Florida. And remember that warm river flows north, and that's why during even early April, we saw river temperatures at 79 degrees. That's 6 to 8 weeks early. That's strike number 2. And then strike number 3, we think, as Eric alluded to, and well, this is something that we can help right here, folks. We're talking about the runoff that comes from our lawns, talking about the fertilizer, and that's something that at least we can help with as we get deeper into spring and then eventually summer. Notice the storms that were marching our way. In fact, as we began the 11 o'clock last night, there was still a tornado watch in effect west of our counties. We had severe thunderstorm warnings that made it right to the front door of Columbia County, and then they weakened. Now, that was part of the forecast, but I have to say, even now, with all due humility, I never feel good until we actually see those thunderstorms weaken. But what was the meteorology behind it? Well, let's go to it, and we're going to talk about it. It has a lot to do with a lift. Let's come on back and take a look. We'll talk more about those fair weather cumulus clouds in a bit. But we had 2 Thursday nights ago, it's called divergence. That is, air at 30,000 feet was spreading, causes the air to lift and clouds to build. Last night, the forecast was that right between about 11 and 3, the air at 30,000 feet, we'd start to have what's called confluence. That is, the air at 30,000 feet comes together and then it settles. So what? Well, you need lift for storms, and that caused the opposite, caused the storms to collapse. By this afternoon, we no longer have confluence, so there's lift up at 30,000 feet, but now at the surface, we have dry air, and thus we still have just those partly cloudy skies. In fact, now the air is stabilizing. Is that good? Well, if you want a beautiful weekend, you want more stable air, and that's what we have. Let's take a look, folks. In fact, around much of the nation, April tends to be a nice time of the year. It's also Arbor Day around the nation, so let's talk about those trees. Now, during the summer, I think for no other reason, we appreciate the trees for their shade, but trees in a big way, influence us and help us. Now, these numbers are just for the Jacksonville metropolitan area. Look at this. This is huge. Trees in Duval remove 16.5 million tons of CO2. Remember, we're trying to lessen the amount of CO2. We're trying to shrink that carbon footprint. And check this out as far as runoff, 4.3 million gallons of runoff those deep roots handle. And as far as the pollution we put in the air, they absorb 339 million pounds. Just helps our air be a bit fresher.